Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that heat a little bit before we dive into the action here. The heat, a huge factor now. How do you sort of play that as a bettor? Are you looking into sort of fitness levels of these guys? Is that playing into it at all for you, or is that something that's too hard to quantify?
It definitely is a factor. It depends on the matchup, though. As you can imagine, fitness is less of a question for certain players as it is for others. But when it does come into play, as you'll see in some of the matches we're going to discuss today, it's definitely a relevant point. Especially the thing to look at is the player's history or his previous matches throughout the tournament. You know, if he or she spent a ton of time on court, then that just magnifies the effect of the heat match over match. Whereas if somebody's had a really clear road, then they're likely less vulnerable to succumbing to the blistering heat out there.
All right. Well, I'm sure we're going to get a little bit more into that as we go along with these bets here, Ben. So before we dive into it, again, I'm Court with Bet the Prop. This is Ben Battle. He's a tennis betting expert, a former player, and Ben's got a little bit of a math background that he also utilizes to find some of the best action out there. He also plays a lot of tennis DFS. So we're going to talk some betting here at Bet the Prop. And I know you want to talk about some underdogs. Round one is through, I should say, and we're into round two. So we're going to talk some underdogs here. And let's talk a guy who's going to be a huge underdog going up against Rafa Nadal, the Canadian Vasek Pospisil.
Yes. So we have Vasek Pospisil versus Rafael Nadal in round two. And the action I like is Pospisil plus 9 games versus Nadal at an even payout. So the thing to know about this is that Pospisil sucks. He's really, really bad, but what he does really, really well is hold serve. So he has about a 0% chance to win this match and pretty small chance to even take a set, but I really think he's likely to cover the 9-game spread. So Pospisil has an 83% hold rate on hard court throughout his career, and he even has a 78% hold rate against the top 20 players on hard throughout his career. So even though he's not very good in his miserable record overall, he still manages to hold serve and put up games on the scoreboard. So in his last matches against top 10 players, he played against Coric, Cilic 3 times, Isner, Thiem, and Novak Djokovic, and he covered the spread of 9 games against every single one of those players. It wasn't that particularly close either. If you project the spread to 3 out of 5 sets, and some of them were 2 out of 3 sets, the spread was approximately 6.4 games in all those matches. So even though Nadal is one of the best returners in the game, of course I didn't even look at what the line is for the money line for Nadal to win the match. It's probably insane. I really think Pospisil can cover the plus 9 here, and I'm happy to take it.
Yeah, it's we just got it up on the screen here. It's minus 3,502.
Yeah, unsurprising.
Yeah, and Pospisil is plus 1,817 to come through. So yeah, I don't like his odds, but as you say, I mean, an 83% hold percentage is pretty impressive. So that bet makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that one really just comes down to the math.
Okay.
You know, obviously Pospisil is the dog to win, but you look at the math, how he's performed historically against other top 10 competition, and it lines up well.
Okay. Moving on now, Ben. The American Denis Kudla, he won in straight sets in the first round. What are you thinking for the second round for the American?
So we have Denis Kudla playing against Juan Martín del Potro, one of the favorites to win the title in the second round. And the action I'm taking is Denis Kudla plus 7.5 games versus Juan Martín del Potro, paying out at minus 125. So this is another one where I think the underdog is going to keep it close. Bit of a different situation than against Nadal, though. Kudla definitely has a chance to take a set. He's a really gritty competitor, and he's had a very strong hard court season. He's been ascending in his career, really, this hard court season. He beat Karen Khachanov in straight sets, which looks like a phenomenal win given Khachanof's form lately. He also beat Pouille in this hard court phase, and he had a really tight match, 7-6 in the third versus Nick Kyrgios. And Kudla's brought this momentum into a very, very strong first round straight sets routine win over Berrettini. Berrettini's had a great couple months as well. I really think this is one where the heat comes into play too.
Okay.
Where I could see the heat slowing down Delpo a little bit, maybe just stopping a little bit of his momentum. Definitely could see Kudla being able to take advantage of a lapse in Del Potro's level for a couple games, maybe even take a set. And I just think that there are a lot of factors, particularly Kudla's form and grittiness, that while he's a very large underdog to win the match, I think he can keep it close enough within the spread of 7.5 games.
All right, moving on now. The Spaniard Fernando Verdasco, he took out his countryman Lopez in the first round again. Straight set, 6-2, 7-5, 6-4 in the first round. And he moves on to take on a guy that we haven't seen much of this year. And tough to say what kind of form he's in, taking on the Brit Andy Murray. What are you thinking about this match? Pretty interesting matchup.
Exactly. We have Fernando Verdasco playing against Andy Murray. The action I like is Verdasco plus 3 games paying out at -110. So you asked about Murray's form, and my opinion is that it's pretty miserable right now. I really do not think Murray has his game back yet. He dropped a set to Duckworth last round. Duckworth's name kind of indicates his overall level on the tennis court. So that was just it. If Murray had his normal level, that would be 6-2, 6-2, 6-2. That was, I think I said 4 sets. 6-2, 6-2, 6-2 beat down.
Yeah.
So really it's just evident that Murray's not there yet. Murray has 4 wins since his comeback, 4 hardcourt wins since his comeback. Every single one of them has come in, or he's dropped a set in every single one of those wins. So I just think it's really evident that Murray's not there yet. Verdasco was really sharp in the first round, and throughout his career he's shown he has the upside to compete with the highest guys in the game. So you could very well make the argument that Verdasco should be the favorite in this match. So I think he'll definitely be able to capitalize on Murray's low level. This would actually be the best win Murray would have since his comeback if he were to beat Verdasco. So I think there's a ton of value at Verdasco plus 3 games. And I think you could take him outright if you like, but I think the safety of having the 3 games makes me want to go with that instead of the outright, which was about paying out at plus 140 around there.
Yeah.
So I'll take the 3 games at minus 110.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Plus 3 at minus 110. So pretty much even money. You're paying the juice there. But as you mentioned, I mean, just we haven't seen much from Murray to give us much faith there. All right, moving on to the South African, Kevin Anderson. He took out an American in Harrison in 5 sets. So he may be one of those guys who was really feeling the heat in New York this week. 7-6, 5-7. 4-6, 6-3, 6-4. He took him out, so that was a bit of an epic match there. What are you thinking for him in the second round?
Yes, sir. We have Jeremy Chardy, the Frenchman, heading up against Kevin Anderson, and my pick is Jeremy Chardy to win at plus 310. So like you mentioned when you were reading that epic scoreline off of Anderson's first round, that match took 4 hours and 15 minutes. It was an absolute war out there, Anderson versus Harrison. I'm really just not buying Kevin Anderson as a top 5 level player on hard courts in recent months. I really question whether his legs have enough left in it right now after the really intense season he's had in the last year. Is probably the highest level he's sustained over a period of time like that throughout his career. And like I said, at 32 years old, I'm just not totally buying into him as an elite player, or I should say a super elite player in that upper echelon. So I think that the time on court combined with the overall wear and tear on Kevin Anderson's body makes him ripe for an upset. And like we talked about, the heat really plays into that. You know, it just magnifies the physical toll that everything's taking on Anderson. So Anderson did beat Shardy actually in Cincinnati 2 weeks ago. He beat him 7-6, 6-2. But Shardy's really a streaky player. He's kind of been like that throughout his career. I actually picked against Shardy last round. I was a big proponent of taking Rublev over Shardy because Rublev was 4-0 against Shardy and had won all 8 sets versus him. Shardy had never won a set against the guy, but then he came out 2 days ago and kicked his butt. So I really think that it's just another example of the streakiness behind Shardy's game. He's a really high upside player, and I think that mixed with Kevin Anderson kind of being in a bad spot right now, it feels like, I think that makes Shardy a really strong candidate to get the outright win at plus 310.
Yeah, plus 310. You got to love those odds for sure for a guy who is just coming off an epic match and is going to be, I would imagine, really struggling to find his legs. Okay, let's move on to the Belgian David Goffin. He had an easy go of it in the first round, 6-2, 6-4, 7-6, and he now moves on to the second round to take on Haas. Is that how you say it?
Haase.
Haase, okay. So you know the name and you know the line. What can you tell me about it?
Yes, sir. We have David Goffin versus Robin Haase, and the action I like is the over on the 37.5 games, paying out at minus 110. So I find this a really compelling matchup. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, to be honest. They're both very unique players, Haase and Goffin. They're counterpunchers who do not win with offense. They're fit rather unique styles, relying on their defense, movement, and their guile to take down opponents. And when two players like that play against each other, it's just interesting to think about how it could go. So the last time they played was in the French Open this year, and Haase was up 2 sets to love, and then Goffin won the third set 6-4, then won the final 2 sets 6-1, 6-0. Just very interesting scoreline. So anyways, I like the over on this match because since 2015, Goffin has 7 wins over top 50 players in Grand Slams, and only once against Ivo Karlovic did he do it in straight sets. I really think that Haase can stay around or come out firing and do enough that Goffin won't be able to dominate him for 3 sets. Particularly, like I talked about, the way the matchup works of having 2 counterpunchers trying to feel each other out, and it'll be a real test of fitness and mental endurance too. And I just think that that's the product of a match that's not going to end in straight sets. I really like Haase over Mackenzie McDonald in round 1-2. That was based off of Haase being in really strong form lately, and Haase's physical conditioning really shined in this round. He took down Mackenzie McDonald in 5 sets after losing the first 2 sets, and then he just absolutely dominated him the last 3 sets. He was too strong, too fit. It was routine at that point. So I just think I really like Haase to push the over on that. Haase has a surprisingly poor 2-10 record in 5-setters, but he really seems to reach the extended portion of matches very frequently in Grand Slams, and I think this will be another one.
Makes sense. All right, moving on to the Greek, Stefanos Tsitsipas. Am I getting that right? I think
Tsitsipas.
Say that yes, one more time.
Close enough for saying it. Tsitsipas.
Okay. So he had, again, a straight sets victory in round 1. So one of those guys who might not be feeling the heat as much as some others. What are you thinking for him in round 2 versus Medvedev?
Yeah, so Tsitsipas is playing against Daniil Medvedev, and I'm taking Tsitsipas at the money line to win outright, paying out at minus 140. Tsitsipas, we've talked about him quite a bit in the futures video we did. So he's a breakout 20-year-old star. He has a 14-6 record featuring 5 top 10 victories since the end of the clay season. He's just absolutely skyrocketed his career trajectory from a has potential candidate to a contending for a top 10 ranking by the end of the year candidate. So Medvedev's also a breakout youngster. He's 22 years old. Medvedev won one of the warm-up tournaments, the latest one last weekend at Winston-Salem. And significantly, Medvedev beat Tsitsipas in the Miami Open in March this year on hard court. It was in 3 sets, and Medvedev seemed to take the final 2 sets rather handily. It was an impressive performance for him. But this kind of came before Tsitsipas's true breakout, though, so I think there should be less weight put on that. What's important to me is that Tsitsipas has had a ridiculously high level the last 2 months, like I mentioned, since the end of the clay court season. And one thing I really like to look at in terms of whether that type of thing is sustainable is second serve win percentage. The reason I like second serve win percentage is because it takes away some of the variance in really strong first serve streaks. So a guy can go out there and be bombing serves for a week and make a lot of noise because he's serving out of his mind and upset some people. But second serve win percentage can be viewed as kind of a more true look on the low end outcome of a player's serving capabilities. And of course, the player's serving capabilities are incredibly important in terms of determining the outcome of a tennis match. So going off of that, so Tsitsipas maintained a 55% win percentage on his second serve points in this 3-month stretch following the French Open, where he has 20 matches played, so a decently relevant sample size. Medvedev has a lower clip at 50%, while Medvedev also faced much weaker competition. Remember, Tsitsipas was competing against multiple top 10 and other top 20, top 50 players. So for reference, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Andy Roddick, and John Isner are the only 5 players in history to maintain a 55% win percentage on their second serve throughout their career. So that really helps illustrate how effective Tsitsipas's the weapon of his serve has been in his recent success, and it might indicate that this serving success is more than just a hot streak. For the reasons I spoke about, and why I like second serve win percentage as a kind of predictive statistic. I don't know if predictive is the right word, but a good descriptive statistic of prior performance. So these two players, and so to me that shows that Tsitsipas is going to bring back this really high level, and that he should beat Medvedev because his level's been so high, much higher than Medvedev's.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
One interesting thing to note, Court, is that these two players also have a lot of beef too.
Oh, yeah.
After their match in Miami, when Medvedev won, there were a ton of unpleasantries exchanged after the handshake. They were saying some nasty stuff to each other, and there's this kind of funny video of Medvedev inciting Tsitsipas, telling him to basically come at him and like get in my face and yell at me, and I don't know, just interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's not something you always see in tennis. It's such a gentleman's sport, right? So any kind of trash talk and controversy, I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too. I think it makes it more interesting. Yeah. So the point is, it'll be a great match. Good. But I think that Tsitsipas should take it down.
Okay, so you're eating the chalk there. Moving on to Dominic Thiem. Dominic Thiem, again, another easy straight sets in the first round, so he should have some fresh legs. What do you like for him in the second round?
Yeah, so we're moving on to some favorites here. We had quite a few ups, or I guess Tsitsipas was the first favorite I picked, but yeah, lots of upset and spread coverings here. Now another favorite we have is Dominic Thiem matched up against Steve Johnson, and I'm taking Thiem outright to win, money line at -170. I don't really understand this line. Thiem's a top 10 player. He's made the round of 16 here the last 2 years. Stevie hasn't been past the second round at the US Open since 2012 and doesn't have a remarkable record against the top 10 or top 20. I think the line is probably based off of Thiem's struggles in the recent months. He didn't have the best hard court stretch, and also had some questionable losses in the lower level clay events following the French. But really, I think lots of that was kind of been this nagging injury he's had, and he also got sick for one of the tournaments there when he had a poor loss. So, but I think he really rebounded with only dropping 8 games in the first round versus a solid opponent in Mirza Basic. Yeah, the guy's name is Mirza Basic. So I really think it's pretty simple. I think the line's too low, so there's a lot of value in taking Thiem here.
Makes sense. All right, moving on to another Brit here, Cameron Norrie, and he had a bit of a tougher time in the first round. He did drop 1 set, and he, all his sets went fairly long. He won 7-5, 4-6, 6-4, 6-3. So he's kind of he might not be affected as much as some other people. And what are you thinking for him in the second round here?
Yeah, so we have Cameron Norrie matching up against Dusan Lajovic, and I'm picking Cameron Norrie to win outright in the money line, paying out at -135. So Norrie was the top college player in D1 NCAA American tennis for a year or two, and he's had a few issues transitioning to the pros, but he's really kind of come into his own this hard court season. He's an absolute fighter, and Lajovic has never been past the second round of a hard court slam, so I don't really value Lajovic's experience. He's a little older as a bonus for him in this matchup. I think it's, like we talked about with the heat, I think it's going to be a mental and physical war, and I really think Norrie has the edge in both aspects. Norrie's a grinder. He's mentally tough in both his actual mental toughness and the way he plays. You really have to beat him. He's not going to beat himself. And Lajovic is kind of a bit of a clown, has some questionable fitness. Lajovic is 2-6 in hard court best-of-5 matches that haven't ended in straight sets. So anytime it's gone to 4 sets or 5 sets, Lajovic has a 2-6 record, and I think this one's highly likely to make it there. I also am a fan of taking the over on this one, and I definitely think Norrie's going to out-tough him.
All right, Ben, that makes a lot of sense. So we've got a couple more here before we call it a night. Kachikov, another guy who had a pretty easy time of it in the first round, and it doesn't look like his opponent is going to have too much to offer in the second round. What do you say?
Indeed, yeah. We have Karen Kokhanov facing off against Lorenzo Sonego, and I'm taking Kokhanov in straight sets at -155. So Sonego's a qualifier. He's played 13 sets of tennis in the last 3 days, the last few days, and in the first round he defeated a, sorry to say it, washed up and retired Gilles Muller in an epic 5-set serving display in the first round. And I think Sonego's inability to dispatch his qualifying opponents, lots of those matches went the distance as well, and the fact that he couldn't dispatch Mueller in easier fashion just kind of indicate that he should be an easy out for the ascending Kokhanov. Kokhanov's really just kind of exploded in recent months, and he's definitely another one of these young guys that's on the up and up, and I think that he'll continue his momentum in the first round, and he'd be unlikely to drop a set. So I like him in straights at -155.
All right, Ben, we've got one more here, and we're going to take a look at the women's side here. Now, I noticed that you're not having as many of the women on this time around as we look at the second round. I know on Twitter you were feeling a little bit of the pain after betting a few of these first matches. Why is that? Take me through that a little bit. Are you finding the women just that variance kicking up a little bit, or what's the thinking there?
Yeah, really, like we've talked about, there's a lot more variance on the women's side, than being 2 out of 3 compared to 3 out of 5 for men, smaller sample size every match. And I really just decided I had more success with the men in the first round, and I just wanted to dig into them more for these next 2 days. And I really only selected one women's match, which we'll talk about in a second, because it really stuck out to me. But I really only want to stick to the women if I feel very confident in a call, whereas the men, like I said, the sample size is larger, so a small edge can emerge, whereas in the women it kind of gets swallowed up in variance.
Okay, well, let's get right into it here. Ostapenko, she went 3 sets in her first round, and now faces the American Townsend in the second round.
Yeah, so Ostapenko had an amazing first round match against Petkovic. Petkovic is always a tough out, and Ostapenko really brought the heater at the end of that third set and took it out of her grasp, and that's why Ostapenko's top 10 player in the world now. So she's facing off against Taylor Townsend, and I'm predicting an Ostapenko smash at under 20.5 games, paying out at -105, so almost even. So Taylor Townsend is 0-10 versus top 10 players in her career, and in those losses, she's averaged only 5.2 games won, and she's gone over a total of 19 games only once, and both of those were against Wozniacki, somebody who has a very different style than somebody like Ostapenko. Wozniacki's a more consistent grinder, backboard type of thing, and I guess that matches up better with Townsend because Townsend got absolutely smoked by all of the big hitting top women. So I expect Ostapenko to do just that. She should hit right through Townsend's heavy ball, and I don't expect it to be competitive, so I definitely like the under 20.5 games at almost even.
All right, Ben. Well, there's a whole lot of picks and a whole lot of information that you took us through there. Just quickly before we wrap it up for the night, what have we learned so far in the first round here? Obviously, a lot of question marks going in with certain guys. Djokovic to a certain degree, Andy Murray to a certain degree. We talked about him. Of course, the heat's playing a factor. Give me a lesson that you learned in the first round here.
Well, I think one thing to note is that Djokovic still struggles with the heat.
Yeah, I saw him complaining about it in the press, wasn't he?
Yeah, Djokovic has had these issues throughout his entire career. He pulled out in the middle of a match at the Australian Open one time, and he gets dizzy on court and calls the trainer. He called the doctor today against what's his name, Fuskevits, somebody that he should absolutely annihilate, but he's out there stumbling around and not himself. So I mean, I think that that makes you nervous if you pick Djokovic. I have a bit of Djokovic futures, so it does worry me a little bit. And Federer gets that advantage getting to play at night and not having to worry about that as much. So maybe Novak will make a push for the organizers to have him scheduled for the next few days. Yeah.
Well, the weather's certainly going to be something to watch for. I haven't had a chance to check the forecast tonight, but as we were talking about, Djokovic was the favorite going into this tournament. So if the heat continues, that's certainly going to be a situation to keep an eye on because it obviously affects him. I mean, if he's as you say, if he's calling trainers, we're seeing him complain into the press about all this. So even if it's who knows how much it's affecting him physically, but it's certainly affecting him mentally. There's no question about it if he's complaining in the press. So definitely going to be. Sorry?
Why is he complaining in the press? It's just such a weird thing to do. You're the favorite at the tournament. You're one of the greatest of all time. Like, why are you complaining about the heat? It's just kind of petty and one of the things that annoys me about Djokovic.
Yeah,
but
it is odd, but that's who he is, right? And you gotta love him for it, or love him or hate him, I guess. So that's going to be an interesting situation to watch as the tournament unfolds. The weather out in muggy New York, so we'll be watching that. Ben, I want to thank you very much for joining us and enlightening us ahead of the second round, which kicks off tomorrow morning in Flushing Meadows. Of course, this video is going to be up on YouTube. We're going to get all these picks up on the website over at www.bettheprop.com, and you can get some of Ben's thoughts there. If you have any questions for Ben, check him out at Twitter at Ben_battle3. We see it on the screen there. If you have any questions about his thought processes, I know he'll be happy to answer. We're happy to tell you whatever you want to know over us at Bet the Prop, at Bet the Prop. Check out that article in the morning. Good luck in your betting, Ben. And we're looking forward to catching up with you real soon for another betting breakdown as the U.S. Open rolls on.
Thank you so much, Court. Pleasure to be here as always.
Okay, good night, and thanks everyone for watching. Good night.